The rain in New York that night cut across my face like icy blades. I huddled under a rusty awning on the corner of Bedford Avenue, my phone buzzing relentlessly in my hand. Neon lights from a taco joint splashed across the soaked sidewalk, a messy blur like an unfinished painting. I hit answer. $10? My mother's voice exploded, sharp as a siren echoing from somewhere far off. Are you treating us like a joke? Tiffany sends thousands every month, and you, $10 freaking dollars? I swallowed hard. My throat burned, bitter and raw. She was gasping for breath, each word landing like a stab. Do you know how embarrassing it is? I had to lie to the neighbors, tell them you sent so much. Now they're laughing at me. I'm humiliated. I raised you for over 20 years, and all I get is $10? My name's Emily. I'm 28. I used to be a nurse at a private hospital in Manhattan. 2 weeks ago, they let me go during a budget cut. My bank account was down to $40 after paying rent for my cramped studio in Bushwick. Last night's dinner was instant noodles and the last egg left in my fridge. But my mom didn't care. To her, I was nothing more than a walking ATM. Tiffany, my younger sister, the Instagram princess with tens of thousands of likes on each photo, she was the real pride. My mother's voice yanked me back. Tiffany sends money so I can buy your father's medicine, and you're just selfish and pathetic. I parted my lips, wanting to say, Mom, I just lost my job. I only have $40 left. I don't even know how I'll eat this week. But before I could get a word out, she roared over me. Shut up. I don't want to hear your excuses. Tiffany is successful. She cares about her family. You, useless. You're not my daughter. Then came the cold, flat beeps. The screen went black. Raindrops splattered onto it, spreading like blood. I sank to my knees, gripping a lamppost. In a flash, I remembered Tiffany's 18th birthday. Mom rented a fancy rooftop bar in Midtown, the city skyline twinkling behind her. Tiffany beamed next to a 3-tiered cake covered in sugar flowers. I stood by the buffet, clutching a white envelope. $200 I had scraped together from 3 part-time jobs, hoping to finally give her something nice. But when I handed it to her, Tiffany barely glanced, tossed it into her purse, and said, "Thanks," or actually, never mind. Mom turned to me, patted my shoulder, but her words cut deeper. You should learn from Tiffany how to make money, how to act. Stop making me ashamed of you. A cold draft crept down my neck, pulling me back to Bedford Avenue. Tonight, sirens wailed closer, blending with rap beats booming from the vinyl store across the street. The sky was a heavy gray, swallowing every last flicker of light. I pulled up an old text from Tiffany, a photo of Dad grinning at a poker table in Atlantic City, whiskey in hand, surrounded by red and black chips. Tiffany had texted, "Dad's just blowing off steam, don't worry." And I believed her. I thought they needed money for medicine, for bills. But the tears on my face tonight weren't for them. They were for me, realizing, when did I become nothing but an automatic cash machine? There was a time when I was 23, I stayed awake for 48 hours straight in the ER, picking up extra shifts just to scrape enough together to send home. Mom called right after. Good, keep it up. Tiffany does that too. I clutched the break room table, sobbing, but still wired the money immediately. Tonight, under the bruised rain in Brooklyn, I finally saw what I'd denied for years. I was never enough because they never wanted to see me. I gripped my phone, staring at the blinking $40. I let out a sharp breath, the taste of metal flooding my lungs. One thought crackled through my mind like lightning. If I disappeared right now, would they mourn me or just miss the cash flow? A thin guitar floated up from the subway station below, the voice of a skinny street musician rasping, "Sometimes the ones you love the most break you the hardest." I let out a dry laugh. Tonight, for the first time in forever, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't begging for love. I wasn't draining myself to be labeled the good daughter. I zipped up my backpack, lifted my head, and let the rain slam into my face. My legs felt heavy as I stepped down into the subway, but my mind was suddenly weightless. As the train screeched below, I closed my eyes, breathing deep. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. I just knew that this time, I was going to save myself. My heavy steps on the subway stairs that night pulled me straight into an old memory, one I had tried to bury as deep as possible. That ivory white wooden house tucked away in the Michigan pines. Those winter mornings when the snow piled high up to the porch, the cold slicing into my skin until my nose turned bright red. Tiffany always had a brand new Canada Goose jacket, clutching a mug of hot cocoa Mom made just for her. Me, I wore a hand-me-down gray wool coat from the neighbor's daughter, still carrying that stubborn smell of mildew. Back then, I used to dream of going to med school, becoming a resident doctor, saving lives in a city hospital. I applied to the University of Michigan, even got an interview invite for a scholarship. I still remember that evening so clearly, opening that letter in front of my parents, my heart pounding like a drum. But Mom barely glanced at it, her voice icy. "Emily, Tiffany needs money for acting school in New York. You can go to med school later. Tiffany can't miss this chance. Do you understand?" I went numb. Those words sliced right through me, severing a dream before it even had a chance to grow. I clutched the letter, ran upstairs, buried my face into my pillow, and cried until I couldn't breathe. When Tiffany left for New York, I stood at the Detroit airport, watching her wheel a hot pink suitcase bigger than she was. Mom pulled me aside, shoving a transfer form into my hand. "Remember to send Tiffany $500 every month so she can study properly. Don't let me down." I nodded, biting my tongue. At that point, I was working 2 part-time jobs, mornings at Starbucks making lattes, evenings cleaning offices. Month after month, I wired away more than half of what I earned. I kept telling myself, one day Mom will be proud of me. One day. But that day never came. On my 22nd birthday, Mom texted, "Sorry, I'm busy prepping for Tiffany's showcase. We'll celebrate your birthday next year." I turned off the lights in my room, chewed on a leftover cookie from the day before, and imagined the music, the stage lights, and Tiffany's laughter echoing somewhere across Manhattan. I always believed if I just did enough, sacrificed enough, Mom would finally see me. But the more I tried, the further away I felt. Once, I secretly read an email Mom sent my aunt in San Francisco. "Emily is useless, withdrawn, no future. Tiffany, she's going to be a star. She deserves every penny." When I finished nursing school, Mom only texted, "Good, but remember, Tiffany is still the priority." I once tried to reason with her. "Mom, I need money to continue my specialization, to advance. I want to be better." She cut me off, her words like a slap to my face. "Money doesn't grow on trees. If you don't send more, how's Tiffany supposed to maintain her image? You want your sister to be ridiculed online?" That day, I held my phone, shaking so badly I nearly threw it against the wall. But in the end, I stayed silent, just like always. Those memories stuck to me like a stain that wouldn't wash out. Now, as I dragged my feet down the subway steps, the street guitarist's voice drifted up again. I tried so hard to be good enough. I looked at my phone screen, the harsh white glow stabbing my eyes. All those transfers, stacked one on top of the other. $500 sent, $700 sent. I remembered every extra shift, mopping blood in the ER, standing until my feet swelled, just to scrape together enough to send home. During those endless nights, I would always wonder, if I disappeared, who would actually look for me? Or would they just look for the lost money? I remembered the time Tiffany called on FaceTime crying, "Sis, I need money to book a photo studio. I'm launching a new campaign. I promise I'll pay you back soon." I bit my lip, and still, I sent it, even when my fridge held nothing but wilted salad and expired milk. One time, I collapsed in the hospital hallway from exhaustion. A doctor told me, "Emily, you have to choose, life or total sacrifice." But I just gave a bitter laugh. I don't have a choice. Tonight, walking through the heavy rain in Brooklyn, I realized for years I'd been crammed into this role of the perfect big sister, to the point I'd forgotten who I even was. I was too scared to love, too scared to dream, too scared to even look up at the sky. I don't know exactly when it started, but little by little, they stole my youth, my dreams, my self-respect. The subway roared below, a gust of wind cutting up through the station. I stood there, letting the rain drench my hair, listening to every drop hit me like a hammer on my heart. Tonight, I wasn't going to hide in those shadows anymore. I'd made up my mind. Tomorrow, I would start unraveling it all. I needed answers. Was Tiffany really sending money? Was Dad actually sick? And most of all, did I have any worth outside of being their cash cow? Those questions pounded in my head, forcing me forward. And for the first time, I wanted to find the truth, even if it cost me everything. I woke up in that tiny studio apartment in Bushwick. Pale light slipped through the thin curtain, casting streaks across the scratched wooden floor. My hand was still swollen from clenching it too tightly the night before. I pulled the thin blanket over me, catching the musty smell mixed with that faint antiseptic scent clinging to my old nurse scrubs. I stepped into the kitchen and opened the fridge. A wilted bag of salad, a carton of milk turned to clumps, and a few slices of rock-hard bread. I picked them up, then set them back down. My stomach twisted with hunger, but I was used to it. My phone pinged. Tiffany. "Hey sis, I just lost a lookbook shoot. Mom's super stressed. She said you should send a little more so she can cover Dad's meds. I promise I'll pay you back soon." I stared at the message, a mix of laughter and pain bubbling in my chest. I remembered when I first started as a nurse. Every extra shift felt like a miracle. I'd think, great, more hours to send home. Tiffany will be proud. But every time I called to tell Mom, she only said, "Good. Remember, Tiffany needs money for her Instagram marketing. Don't let her fail." Back then, I worked mornings as a waitress at a cafe on Spring Street. I'd open at 5 a.m., sweeping floors, making espresso, wiping down tables for hours. The meager tips I collected, I stuffed into envelopes and mailed back to Michigan. At night, I headed to a warehouse in the suburbs, packing boxes on the night shift. The smell of cardboard, the dust, the constant roar of industrial fans, it felt like an endless maze. Some nights, I'd slump against the wall, doze off for 5 minutes, then jerk awake terrified the manager would catch me. My eyes were permanently dark and puffy, my legs heavy as concrete, but I kept chanting to myself, "Just a little more. Tiffany needs me." Every time Tiffany posted brunch photos from Soho with hashtags like grateful, blessed, family first, I felt that bitter laugh rise up in my throat. The question echoed louder each time. Does she really need me or just my wallet? There were mornings I crawled home before dawn, feet covered in grime, my shirt stained with coffee, my shoulders raw and swollen. I'd stare into the mirror, unable to recognize the woman with greasy hair, hollow eyes, and cracked lips staring back at me. I wondered, if Tiffany stood in front of me right now, would she even recognize her own sister? Another ping. This time, Mom. "Don't make me worry more. Tiffany's under so much stress, she's getting stomach ulcers from the lack of money. You need to send more. The whole family is counting on you." I bit down on my lip until I tasted blood. My fingers trembled as I opened my banking app. Balance, $40. I thought of last night, that brutal rain, and that haunting question. If I disappeared, what would they really miss? I closed the app. I stood up and pulled a folder out from under my bed. Inside were my medical specialization forms, scholarship applications, the EMT course list I used to dream about. I'd abandoned all of it because Mom said, "Tiffany is the family's future. Your job is to support." But this morning, staring at those papers, I felt a flicker of something, a tiny spark of light. I remembered that afternoon 3 years ago. I was named Nurse of the Month at my old hospital. The director praised my dedication. My coworkers surprised me with a cake. I sent a photo to Mom. She replied, "Did you send the money yet? Tiffany needs to pay off her credit card." I remember lowering my head, tearing up the award photo, and tossing it in the trash. I exhaled shakily, running my fingers over the papers. All these years, I was too afraid to keep a dream just for me. But this time, I knew I had to stop. I called the career counseling office at the community health center. The woman on the other end had a warm voice, so different from the cold demands I was used to. She asked me, "Emily, what do you want for yourself?" I froze. No one had ever asked me that before. I said, "I want to take the EMT course. I want to really save people. And I want to live my own life." She just laughed softly and said, "Then start today." When I hung up, my hands were shaking. I was crying and laughing at the same time. I grabbed my coat and stuffed the folder into my bag. I was going to fill out those applications. I was going to enroll. I wasn't going to send another cent. The phone rang again. "Tiffany." I stared at the screen. My heart pounded like a war drum. I took a deep breath and hit decline. For the first time, I didn't pick up. Maybe they'd curse me out, call me ungrateful, call me cruel, but I knew if I kept going like this, I'd die in that room, body and soul. A rare beam of morning light slipped through the doorway, shining across my tear-streaked face. I whispered, "I'm sorry, old Emily, but now I have to save myself." Tomorrow, I would go to the center. I would start school. I would rebuild everything. Not for Tiffany, not for Mom, just for me. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. The heavy, gray Michigan sky pressed down on my shoulders as I stepped off the overnight Greyhound. The icy March wind sliced through my thin jacket, stinging my fingers until they went numb. I dragged my suitcase down the empty street, past silent wooden houses with their dull yellow porch lights flickering like tired eyes. I stopped in front of the white-painted wooden house I used to call home. The old pine trees shivered in the wind, whispering secrets only they knew. Inside me, questions roared with no answers. Did Tiffany ever actually send money? Was Dad really sick or just another act? What would I even say when I finally saw them face to face? I took a deep breath and climbed the steps. The door creaked as I knocked hard. A living room light flicked on. I saw Mom's shadow shuffle past the window. She opened a door, her face freezing in shock. "Emily, what the hell are you doing here?" Her voice screeched through the air like nails on glass. I stepped inside. The smell of vanilla essential oil mixed with stale cigarette smoke hit me. On the table sat a brand new Louis Vuitton bag next to a stack of glossy fashion magazines. Mom moved to cover the bag, her eyes darting. "Where's Dad?" I asked, my voice like ice. He's sleeping," she stammered. I glanced at the living room. A poker deck scattered across the coffee table, a half-empty glass of whiskey. Rage bubbled up from my gut, searing my throat. I pulled out my phone, opened my photo library. The photo Tiffany had sent last year, Dad beaming over a blackjack table in Atlantic City. I shoved it in Mom's face. "This is what you call a hospital visit?" She jumped back, eyes wide. "Wait, just let me explain. All these years, I believed you. I believed Tiffany. I worked as a waitress, cleaned warehouses, took night shifts, drained every last dollar. For what? So you could buy designer bags? So Dad could gamble?" I screamed. My whole body shook, my breath coming in jagged gasps. Mom trembled, eyes wild like a cornered animal. "You don't understand. I had to keep up appearances. Tiffany needed to invest in her image. She's about to make it big." Then Tiffany appeared at the top of the stairs, hair a messy halo of curls wrapped in a silk robe. She raised an eyebrow lazily, eyes scanning me like I was something stuck to her shoe. "Oh, look who's here. You think you're that important, huh?" I spun around, my heart twisting into knots. "Tiffany, all these years, you lied to me. You never sent any money, did you?" She snorted, shrugging. "So what? You're weak. You were born to carry the load. That's it." The floor seemed to collapse beneath me. Every suspicion, every quiet ache solidified into a heavy knot in my chest. Mom stepped forward, her voice desperate. "Emily, don't make a scene. Please send more money, at least a few thousand so Tiffany can pay her marketing debt this cycle. You love your sister, don't you?" I looked at them. Suddenly, all the outside sounds vanished. Just the roaring of blood in my ears, my own ragged breath. I opened my bank app, pulled up the transfer history, line after line. $500, $700, $1,000. I held the phone up, every digit slicing like a blade. This is everything I gave up just to buy your fake love. And starting today, I'm done. Mom lunged at me, trying to grab the phone. I shoved her away, her cold skin slipping under my fingers. Tiffany shrieked, flailing an arm, but I stood still, eyes locked forward. I have no more money for this family, no more money for these lies. Dad peeked out from the bedroom, face flushed with booze, slurred, "Emily, don't be selfish. This family survives because of you." I burst out laughing, tears sliding down my cheeks. "I'm not your walking bank anymore. If you want to live, stand on your own. I can't save people who don't want to be saved." Tiffany gripped the staircase railing, her face drained of all that usual arrogant glow. Mom collapsed to the floor, mumbling incoherent pleas. I stepped back, scanning the house that had held so many painful memories. The crooked family portrait on the wall, the fake flower vase layered in dust, the old armchair where Dad used to watch TV. I zipped up my coat and turned around. When I stepped outside, the cold air sliced at my skin, but I felt lighter. The season's first snowflakes drifted down onto my hair, melting instantly on my forehead, sharp but cleansing. My phone started ringing again. This time, I didn't look. With every step, I felt more certain. That night, snow blanketed the narrow street, and in that moment, I heard a voice inside me, firm and steady for the first time. "That's enough. This isn't a family story anymore. This is a survival story." I tightened my grip on my suitcase and walked faster, leaving behind all the lies, the sleepless nights, the salty tears. Tomorrow, I would return to New York, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I pulled my suitcase across the empty train platform. The early morning train back to New York was waiting. Thin snow dusted the station roof, and a line of shivering pigeons perched like silent sentinels. My breath rose in white clouds, but my heart felt steady, eerily calm. A year had passed since that snowy night, a year since I made the choice to walk away and never look back. Now, I no longer lived in that dark studio in Bushwick. I'd moved into a tiny penthouse studio on Fifth Avenue, walls painted white, glass windows overlooking Central Park. In the mornings, sunlight poured across the wooden floor, warm and weightless. I'd finished my EMT program and officially became an emergency nurse. Every shift, I saw faces full of panic and despair, and in their eyes, I learned what real survival looked like. No more scraping together dollars to send away. No more desperate messages. No more Tiffany. No more Mom. Mom had called a few more times, leaving voicemails soaked in tears. "Emily, I was wrong. I need you. Tiffany's being sued for debt. The house is about to be foreclosed." But I never answered. I heard enough to know Tiffany's world had crashed. She'd poured everything into bogus beauty startup projects, burying herself in debt. When sponsors dropped her, she sold her car, her designer bags, and moved into a cheap rental near Chinatown. Mom, after burning through the last of the support money, had to sell the Michigan house and ended up in a damp, grim motel room. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt empty, but it was an emptiness I was finally ready to hold. Today, I was getting ready to attend Julia's wedding, an old colleague from the hospital. I picked a simple sea blue dress, did light makeup. When I looked in the mirror, I froze. The woman staring back at me had no dark circles, no sunken shoulders, no cowering posture. My phone pinged. "Ethan. Waiting downstairs. Please don't wear those slippers again. I don't want you wiping out before the ceremony." Ethan, the street artist turned architect I'd met at a charity gallery event. He had that half smile and gentle eyes, and for the first time, someone had asked me, "What do you love? What scares you? What do you want for yourself?" We took our time. We wandered the High Line, ate pizza standing in Brooklyn Bridge Park, watched movies outdoors. For the first time, I felt seen, not as Tiffany's big sister, not as walking ATM, but as me. At Julia's wedding, when the violin started playing, I instinctively squeezed Ethan's hand tighter. He looked at me and asked softly, "What are you thinking?" I smiled, eyes stinging. "I'm thinking, I finally feel alive." When the newlyweds stepped into the garden, guests erupted in cheers. I watched the fireworks burst overhead and thought of that doctor who once told me, "You have to choose, live or die slowly for others." I chose to live. Amid the crowd, I realized something. Some relationships can't be saved, no matter how much blood and tears you pour into them. Some people you love, they never loved you back. They loved what you gave them. I stepped away from the reception, out into the garden, and breathed in deeply. The smell of roses and damp grass after rain filled my lungs. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and deleted them one by one. Mom, Tiffany, home, Michigan. My hand trembled, but my heart felt weightless. Ethan followed me out, draping his jacket over my shoulders. He didn't ask questions, he just looked into my eyes. I leaned into his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. When we got back to the city, I stood at the window in my apartment. Central Park stretched below, city lights twinkling like stars. I raised my glass of wine and whispered, "To Emily, to finally choosing myself." Tomorrow, I'd be back on shift, running to emergencies, facing pain and loss. But from now on, I wouldn't have to ask permission to exist. If you asked me the biggest lesson I learned through it all, I'd say this: never teach your heart to accept love with conditions. If you have to sacrifice yourself to be loved, that isn't love. And if you ever find yourself alone in the cold night, standing in the rain, phone shaking in your hand like I once did, remember this: you don't have to die slowly to prove your worth. You deserve to live fully, to be free, to be loved without a price tag. Choose yourself, even if it costs you everything.